You're mid-sentence, and the word "you know perfectly well" just disappears. It's not a rare word either. It's a name you've used 100 times. Maybe it's a friend's name, a movie title, or the word for that kitchen gadget. You know exactly what it is. You just cannot pull it out right now. Quick note before we go further. This video is educational only, not medical advice. Always check with your own doctor. So let's talk about what is really happening when this happens to you. Because here's the good news right away. This is not dementia. And it's not really about your age either. Not the way you might fear. It's about something much simpler called retrieval speed. Think of it less like losing information and more like a delay finding it. The word is still there, it's just taking a moment longer to surface. This happens to almost everyone as the decades go by, quietly and normally. So if this sounds like you, take a breath. You're in very good company. Stick around because we're going to unpack exactly why this happens and, more importantly, what actually helps when it happens to you. First, let's be honest about how frustrating this moment can feel. You're mid-conversation, everyone's waiting, and your mind goes politely blank. Some people even feel a flash of worry in that split second of blankness. That worry is completely understandable and also almost always unnecessary, because a slower retrieval is very different from a lost memory. Dementia looks different, and we'll walk through that difference clearly. For now, just know this single moment does not define your memory. It's one small stumble, not a falling brick wall. Most people notice it first with proper nouns, names especially. Someone's name, an actor, a street you drove down 1,000 times. It can also happen with everyday nouns, like a tool or an ingredient. Let's meet an example that shows exactly how this plays out. We'll call her Margaret, 68, sharp as ever, and she loves her crossword. One evening, mid-story, Margaret reached for her neighbor's name and nothing came. She laughed it off, but privately a small worry crept in. Sound familiar? Let's understand what was actually happening in her brain. It wasn't her memory failing, it was her retrieval system pausing. And once you understand that difference, the whole moment feels lighter. So here's the promise for this video: a clear, calm explanation. No scary jargon, no fear, just how this actually works, plainly. Plus a simple everyday fix you can start using immediately. Because there is a fix, and it is far easier than you think. It starts with understanding your brain like a very organized library. Stay with us, because that library idea is about to make total sense. Before we dive into the mechanism, here's one more reassurance. This pattern shows up in 30-year-olds too, just less often. Aging simply turns up the volume on something already normal. So this is not a sign of decline. It's a shift in speed. And speed can be worked with, gently, without any pressure. There's one small everyday habit tied to this we'll reveal soon. So here is what is actually happening inside your brain. In plain terms, when a word suddenly goes quiet on you, your brain doesn't store a word like a single card in one single filing cabinet, tucked away in one exact spot. Instead, information is spread out across many different connected areas of the brain, all wired loosely together like a web. A word, a face, and a memory are each held by a small overlapping web of connections, not one lone location. As we get older, some of those connecting pathways naturally get a little weaker and a little less efficient over time. Nothing is broken and nothing is gone. It's simply a bit slower to fire, much like a dimmer switch instead of an on-off switch. So when you reach for a specific word, the search across that web takes an extra beat or two longer than it used to. That extra beat is really the whole story here. That small delay is exactly what we mean by retrieval speed, plain and simple. It's actually one reason older adults so often do wonderfully on vocabulary and general knowledge tests. The knowledge itself hasn't gone anywhere. If this explanation is finally making the whole thing click for you, go ahead and consider subscribing for more calm explanations like it. Because knowledge, once genuinely learned, tends to stay put for decades. It's specifically the fetching part of the process that slows down with age. Think about a phone number you memorized decades ago, one you haven't dialed in years. You can probably still recite it without thinking, but a brand new coworker's name from last Tuesday, freshly learned and not yet reinforced, understandably takes a bit more effort to recall. That contrast is actually reassuring once you notice it, because it shows your underlying knowledge and memory are genuinely intact and working. What changes with age is simply how fast your brain can locate and then deliver that knowledge back to you in the moment. There's another layer worth understanding here too, and it involves something researchers commonly describe as interference between similar stored memories. Over 60, 70, or 80 years of living, your brain has quietly stored an enormous amount of names, faces, and words. More names, more faces, and more words are now gently competing for the same mental shelf space than when you were younger. It isn't that the shelf itself is full or overflowing, it's simply that there is now a great deal more to sort through. Imagine searching for one specific book inside a library that has quietly grown far larger than it was many years ago. The exact book you're looking for is still there, sitting exactly where it should be, untouched and perfectly intact on its shelf. It just takes a moment longer to walk down the extra aisles that have been added over the years to find it. That library idea is going to matter a great deal in just a few moments, so go ahead and keep it in mind. Now let's bring Margaret back into the picture and walk through exactly how this played out from the inside of her mind. Margaret's brain hadn't actually misplaced her neighbor's name. It was simply searching a fuller, larger mental shelf than it once had to. The connection between her neighbor's familiar face and that specific name had simply loosened slightly, like a rope with a little slack in it. Given just a minute, and without any added pressure or panic, that loosened connection very often reconnects again, all on its own. And that's exactly what happened for Margaret. 10 calm minutes later, standing in her kitchen, the name simply surfaced on its own. The name arrived completely unprompted, in the relaxed way it usually does the moment we finally stop actively forcing it to appear. That word surfacing later on its own is actually one of the clearest, most reassuring signs that this pattern is completely normal. When something is genuinely and permanently lost from memory, it generally does not quietly reappear later all on its own like that. But retrieval delays like Margaret's almost always resolve eventually, often at the strangest, calmest, most unguarded moments you'd never expect. This is one reason clinicians who spend their careers working with older adults tend to describe this whole pattern quite calmly. They commonly frame it as a retrieval speed pattern rather than any kind of storage problem, and that distinction matters enormously. There's a specific moment coming up very soon in this video that ties this whole idea together neatly, so stay with us. Stress also plays a surprisingly large role in how easily words come to you in any given moment of conversation. Under pressure, say in front of an audience or during an important call, that word search can feel even slower than usual. That's really not a coincidence at all. Stress genuinely narrows your mental search, almost like tunnel vision applied specifically to words. The calmer and more relaxed your mind becomes, the wider that entire mental search path opens back up again for you. So here's the simple picture worth holding on to for the rest of this video. Your brain is a well-organized, ever-growing library. Every single word and every name you've ever learned is a real book, sitting safely on a real shelf, never actually thrown away. As the decades quietly pass by, that library simply grows larger and larger. And naturally, its aisles grow correspondingly longer too. So finding one specific book somewhere within it takes a slightly longer walk down the aisle than it used to take you. The book itself was genuinely never lost at any point. The walk to reach it just got a touch longer. And that's really all. This is also exactly why a small hint helps so much in the moment, like being given the first letter of a name. A hint works much like a friendly librarian gently pointing you straight toward the correct aisle, instead of leaving you searching blindly. Suddenly the whole walk shortens dramatically, and the word you were reaching for arrives almost right away, with barely any delay. This pattern is genuinely and completely different from dementia, where entire books can gradually go missing from the shelf altogether over time. In dementia, the underlying information itself becomes harder to retain and hold on to in the very first place, not just to retrieve. Here, in this normal aging pattern, the information stays fully put and intact, only the walk needed to reach it lengthens slightly. That single distinction is genuinely the most important thing to carry with you, and remember from this entire video, a slower walk down a longer aisle to reach the shelf is simply normal aging, not any kind of warning sign at all. A shelf that is quietly and steadily emptying out over time, on the other hand, is a meaningfully different pattern entirely. We'll come back to that important difference clearly and calmly again in just a moment, so keep it in the back of your mind. For now, just notice how much lighter and less frightening this whole moment feels once you start seeing it this way. Margaret eventually told her daughter about that quiet pause, feeling half embarrassed about it and half genuinely curious to understand why. Her daughter, as it turned out, had already read about exactly this retrieval speed pattern and recognized it right away. She gently reminded Margaret that the name had come back entirely on its own, unprompted, later that same evening, without any forcing at all. That single small detail was really the reassurance Margaret genuinely needed in order to finally stop worrying about the whole thing. It's worth asking yourself that exact same question the very next time something like this happens to you personally. Did the word you were reaching for eventually surface later, entirely on its own, without you forcing or straining for it at all? If the answer is yes, that's simply the library aisle pattern at work, not a sign of anything more serious going on underneath. Understanding this one distinction genuinely changes the moment from something scary into something that is simply mildly inconvenient and nothing more. And mildly inconvenient, unlike frightening, is something we can absolutely work with together using a few very simple everyday habits. Coming up next, the everyday habit we teased you with earlier, plus the full simple protocol for shortening that walk down the aisle. Let's start with the single easiest habit of all, and it's the exact one we promised you earlier. Simply give yourself a moment, the instant you feel that word beginning to slip away. Resist the natural urge to panic, freeze, or force it out immediately. Panic narrows your search path, remember from earlier, so the calmer and more relaxed you stay, the faster that word tends to return. Simply say, out loud if it helps you, something like, "It'll come to me," and then gently move on with the rest of your sentence. 9 times out of 10, the word surfaces again within just a few minutes, often right when you've stopped actively hunting for it. That one single shift in reaction, moving from panic toward patience, is genuinely the biggest and simplest lever available to you here. Next, staying mentally active on a regular basis keeps those word connections firing steadily, instead of gradually going quiet from disuse. Reading a little each day, working through puzzles, learning a brand new recipe, or even trying a new phone app all keep those pathways exercised. Social conversation matters just as much as any mental puzzle, because talking with other people is essentially a live workout for word retrieval. Regular chats, phone calls, and small gatherings give your brain frequent, low-pressure practice at pulling words out in real time. Sleep plays a bigger role in all of this than most people realize. So protecting a steady, consistent sleep schedule genuinely helps. Consistent, adequate sleep gives your brain the quiet time it needs overnight to consolidate memories and gently reorganize its mental shelves. Physical movement helps here too, and even something as simple as a daily walk supports healthy blood flow to the brain. You really don't need anything intense here at all. Just consistent, gentle movement on most days of the week is genuinely enough. Another quiet culprit worth knowing about is multitasking, which splits your attention thin and noticeably slows down word retrieval in the moment. Try to finish one thought or one small task before starting the next, especially right in the middle of an important conversation. Reducing background noise and distraction while you're speaking also gives your brain a much clearer runway to find the word it needs. If you're mid-conversation and your mind goes blank, it's perfectly fine to slow right down and simply describe around the word instead. Saying something like the thing you use to open letters while you wait is completely normal, and honestly, it works remarkably well. That simple description often triggers the exact word your brain was already quietly searching for somewhere out on that longer shelf. Hydration matters here too, since even mild dehydration can make everyday mental tasks feel noticeably foggier and slower than usual for anyone. A simple glass of water before an important conversation or gathering is a small, easy habit that is genuinely worth building into your day. Now, here is the one important red flag moment in this video, said calmly, not to worry you, but simply to inform you. Occasional word finding trouble that resolves on its own and doesn't affect your daily life is completely normal aging. Full stop, nothing more. But if you or the people close to you start noticing it happening often and genuinely affecting daily tasks, that's worth paying attention to. If it seems to be steadily getting worse over time, or if it comes paired with getting lost in familiar places, that's meaningfully different. In that specific case, it's worth calmly bringing it up with your own doctor without alarm, simply at your next regular visit. That's not a diagnosis by any means, just a sensible check-in, exactly the same way you'd mention any other changing symptom. For the vast majority of people watching this video, though, this is simply the natural library of your mind growing larger with time. So the real everyday protocol here is refreshingly simple. Pause instead of panicking, stay social, sleep well, move daily, and stay hydrated. None of this requires buying any supplement, taking any prescription, or doing anything dramatic or complicated to start today. Just small, steady, sustainable habits that keep your whole mental library easy and pleasant to walk through year after year. So let's recap the one single thing worth remembering from all of this. A slower word is not a lost word. It is simply normal aging. Give yourself that small pause instead of panicking. Stay socially and mentally active, sleep well, move daily, and remember to stay hydrated. And remember Margaret in all of this. The name came back to her entirely unprompted. Later that same evening, exactly as it usually does for everyone. Quick reminder once again before we go. This video is educational only, not medical advice, so please always check in with your own doctor. If something about this ever feels genuinely different, more frequent than usual, or paired with getting lost in familiar places, do mention it at your next visit. But for almost everyone watching this video today, this is simply your brain's own library quietly getting a little larger with time, nothing more. If this video helped you feel a little less worried today, a quick subscribe genuinely helps us keep making more calm, honest videos just like it. So the next time that word goes quiet on you for just a second, go ahead and smile, breathe, and let your library do its work.